Just take a look around. You can see what climate change and the mountain pine beetle epidemic it helped cause has done to our forests.
And we are, as we stand here, we are losing our forests and our forest cover. That will probably continue for the next 3 to 5 years before we lose probably 80% of the lodgepole pine stands.
Less obvious is what might happen if we don't act to our watersheds, those lakes, rivers, and streams that supply us with the most precious of commodities, the water we drink.
I've lived under boil water advisories in communities I've lived in, and it's very, very difficult because we're so used to turning our tap on and not having to even think about that. And when you do, it really brings it home. So the quality issue is the one that really resonates with me.
You're looking all the way down there at Cranbrook's watershed, and this is the one, all covered with snow now, that supplies Kimberley. The stands of pine form a kind of protective blanket around the watersheds. They trap the snow and in the spring shield much of it from the sunlight, allowing the snow to melt more slowly and helping control the spring runoff, or freshet. But what happens after the pine beetle strikes and kills the trees?
If the trees are not there and the snow melts quickly, we will wind up with a massive freshet where all of the water up in the hills that's currently stored underneath the trees will drain very quickly.
And that could mean flooding in the spring and possible water shortages later on.
For Cranbrook, the threat is huge. It can't be understated. The city relies upon the surface water that comes from each of the two watersheds. If the trees are not there, the massive amount of snowmelt that will occur during the spring will result in the vast majority of water stored in the hills coming down in a 6-week period, after which there's no water stored in the hills, which will cause us significant problems throughout July, August, September, and into October.
Indeed, heavier spring runoffs, regardless of the cause, almost always mean problems for water quality. The worst-case scenario?
It would be tanker trucks bringing drinkable water into a community, the use of bottled water, and if the community is fortunate enough, it may be the development of another source. But all of these result in a huge disruption to the community, risk to human health, and obviously a dramatic increase in cost to that community with regards to its water.
And the costs can indeed be dramatic. Right now, thanks to natural filtering, the water that supplies communities like Cranbrook and so many others is as clean and as pure as bottled water. All that's added is chlorine, just to be safe. But if because of beetle infestation and other possible impacts of climate change, the pine stands around the watershed are devastated, these communities could be facing some big bills for things like water treatment plants.
It will come down to that. There's no question. The communities, the purveyors of water, are charged with good quality water, and they have to maintain it as their Canadian drinking water standards. The only way to maintain that, if you are getting poor quality water, is to treat it. And treatment plants, we're talking multi-millions of dollars.
For example, in West Kelowna, across Lake Okanagan from Kelowna, they've put in a brand new water filtration plant at a cost of nearly $20 million. The small state-of-the-art facility ensures clean and safe drinking water to about 13,000 people. But the water isn't cheap. Homeowners have to pay hundreds of dollars a year more in taxes. The plants also cost a lot, $1 million a year or more, to keep running. It's more than small cash-strapped communities like Kimberley could ever afford. When the Teck-Cominco mine shut down in 2001, Kimberley lost a lot of jobs and more than half of its tax base. It's tried hard with good success to reinvent itself as a resort destination with a distinctly Bavarian theme.
We feel we're in that process of the transition, and we hope to come out of it in the near future when we can actually replace the tax base that Teck-Cominco had in our community. So with our development going on, the surrounding areas now, we hope to replace that, and then we'll feel that we can move ahead and show a lot more progress.
But that progress could be threatened if the city's water supply is put at risk by the pine beetle or other effects of climate change.
So we can see as the beetle comes down from the north and into this area, we can see Mark Creek just really getting hit hard. With some areas being 100% predominantly pine, we can see those areas just being nothing left there, just being bare ground. So it is a big concern in the city.
And you can understand why. Possible changes in precipitation patterns, increased risks of flooding and forest fires, and the impact those events would have on the city's drinking water and on its budget.
We believe that if a major fire hit there, the quality and quantity of the water would suffer for a long time. So we'd have to put in 2 of these plants, one to serve the people that live in Marysville and one to serve the people that live in Kimberley. So we would be getting hit double whammy with that. If you're looking at 2 of these plants and you got to pay anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million a year operating them, that would be a big hit on the community of our sizes of 6,700 people.
And so what's to be done? As a first step, SIBAC recommends communities undertake assessments of their watersheds to figure out whether they are indeed at risk.
So it's trying to link these communities with the advice to ensure that communities that have a large amount of pine in their watershed pay attention and start taking some action, and that's what our report is recommending.
I agree with 100% with the SIBAC recommendation that needs to be done. They need to look at the type of forest that they have, and it's going to be different throughout their watershed and between watersheds, and they need to look at how sensitive their watershed is to the kind of increased flooding that we're looking at when we do salvage or have mountain pine beetle attack.
Logging can help mitigate the effects of the beetle if it's done right, determining whether to log, where to log, and how much to log. The science is there to help us figure out the right answers if we take the time to understand it.
I think people are not looking at it in enough detail. They're making assumptions because there's a lot of dead pine that maybe we should just log it all, and they're not taking enough detailed analysis of what's actually in their watershed and how sensitive their watershed will be to the problems that pine beetle or that salvage harvesting will cause.
That issue, among others, is now confronting rural communities throughout BC, including First Nations, which have felt the impact of the pine beetle more than most.
It spells impending disaster for not only my community, but I think all rural communities in British Columbia that depend on the forest industry. Our people see it. When the trees are dead, it changes the ecology of the forest, and not in a good way. Because it's harder to find the things that we need to sustain ourselves as First Nations people, and we really see the land out there as it's our breadbasket, because we still hunt and fish and gather and do our spiritual practices.
And that's why Chief Matthews says it's so important to implement SIBAC's #1 recommendation, to constantly assess our watersheds and do what must be done to protect them.
SIBAC's role in the future is continuing the work that's already been started by the collaboration between First Nations and municipalities and other regional governments. It occupies a unique role in terms of bringing those groups together in a positive fashion around an issue that needs the attention of British Columbians.
One thing that already has our attention is climate change, and one of its most visible and destructive impacts, the mountain pine beetle epidemic. SIBAC will continue to work with communities, First Nations, and with all levels of government to better understand our watersheds and to help protect one of our most precious commodities, the water we drink.